million. Marry my son. I am begging you.
Ma'am, get up. Please, you cannot do this. Get up off the floor.
I will not move from this floor until you say yes. Please. When I am gone, he is not safe. You are the only one kind to him.
I don't understand. I have someone of my own to save.
The most feared woman in the city was on her knees in front of a cleaning lady, and she would not get up. She had walked into every room she had ever entered like she owned the floor and everyone standing on it. Now that same woman was folded down onto the marble Liana scrubbed for a living, her hands shaking, her voice cracking on a single impossible sentence. $1 million. Marry my son. Liana's whole body went stiff. The mop was still in the bucket behind her. Her shift was not even over. 20 minutes ago, she had been wiping fingerprints off the glass of the 41st floor, invisible the way she was always invisible up here, and now Seo Myung-hee was gripping her hand like a drowning woman grips the last rope. A tear slid down the older woman's face, and that was the thing that frightened Liana most. Not the money, not the words, the tear. Because women like Seo Myung-hee did not cry. They did not kneel. They did not beg cleaning ladies for anything. Whatever had brought this woman to the floor had to be worse than anything Liana could imagine. Liana dropped down and reached for her shoulders. She tried to lift the woman the way you would lift anyone who had fallen, gently, firmly, with both hands. Get up, she said, please, you cannot be down here like this. But Myung-hee would not move. She clung tighter, her manicured fingers digging into the rough fabric of Liana's apron, and she shook her head like a child refusing to let go. And there they were, two women on a floor 41 stories above a sleeping city. One of them owned half of it through fear. The other owned nothing but a mop and a secret she had told no one. The skyline burned behind them, cold and beautiful and indifferent, and for one strange moment the most powerful woman in Seoul was smaller than the woman who cleaned her tower. Then Liana noticed the third person in the room. A young man stood near the windows, paying no attention to any of it. He was running his fingers along the lines between the floor tiles, counting them under his breath, 22, 23, 24, as if the begging and the crying had nothing to do with him at all. He was beautiful in a quiet way, and completely somewhere else. Myung-hee followed Liana's eyes to the young man, and whatever was left of her control collapsed. That is my son, she whispered.
Seo Junho.
He is the gentlest soul I have ever known, and the world will eat him alive the moment I am gone. Her voice dropped so low Liana had to lean in to catch it. And I am going soon. And there it was, the thing that made Liana's chest go tight in a way that had nothing to do with the stranger on the floor. She knew exactly what it was to be running out of time to save someone you loved. She carried that race in her pocket every single day. $1 million was not a number to her. It was her sister Zola's life, sitting on a hospital waiting list across an ocean. What none of them saw was the man in the shadows by the elevators. Seo Jae-wook had come up to find his aunt, and had instead found her on her knees in front of the help. He did not step forward. He simply watched, and a thin smile touched his mouth, the smile of a man who has just been handed a weapon he did not know existed. Liana got out of that lobby somehow. She did not remember pulling her hand free, or saying she needed to think. She only knew she was suddenly in the gray service corridor with her back against the cold lockers, the fluorescent light buzzing over her head, her heart pounding at what felt like 100 beats a minute. A dying woman had just offered her the exact amount that could save her sister. It was too perfect. It was terrifying. Back in her rented room that night, she could not sleep. She lay on the narrow bed with the bright print throw and stared at the ceiling. On the little table sat a photo she kept face down because some days she could not bear to look at it. Her sister laughing before the diagnosis. Liana had crossed an ocean and scrubbed floors for 2 years to send money home, and it was still not enough. It was never enough. She sat up and turned the photo over at last. Zola's face smiled back at her, younger, healthier, before everything. Liana pressed it to her chest and let herself cry for the first time in months, quietly, so the neighbors would not hear. If saying yes to a stranger could buy her sister a future, why did she have to say no out of pride? The next day, a black car was sent for her. It carried her up to a penthouse that did not look like a home so much as a museum built to intimidate. Everything in it was dark and expensive and arranged at perfect angles, as if softness had been banned years ago. Liana stood in the doorway in her one good dress and felt the full weight of how far she was about to step outside her own life. Myung-hee was waiting, upright and composed, the kneeling woman from the night before locked away behind a cool mask. Liana understood instantly that the begging had been a one-time thing, a door that would never open again. Good, Liana thought. She did not want this woman's tears. She wanted terms. I have conditions, Liana said, before you say a single word. The money goes where I say, when I say, Liana told her. Half before, half after. I will be a real wife to your son in name and in respect, but I will never pretend to a feeling I do not have, and I will never let him be treated as less than a man in front of me. Myung-hee's eyes flickered at that last line, something like surprise, maybe even approval. Then Junho came in. He stopped at the edge of the rug, exactly where the pattern changed, and looked at the floor instead of at her. You are the woman who hums, he said. Tuesdays and Fridays, near the east windows. You always miss the same note in the third line, and you never notice. Liana blinked, and then, despite everything, she laughed. It was the first true thing anyone in this family had said to her. She sat with him, and slowly the room stopped feeling like a museum. He told her he liked things that stayed the same. She told him she liked things that grew. He thought about that for a long moment, the way he thought about everything fully, with his whole attention, and then he nodded once, as if filing it somewhere safe. Nobody had ever listened to Liana the way this strange, gentle man listened. She was leaving when Jae-wook stepped into her path. He smiled the way a closed door smiles. So you are the bargain my aunt found, he said softly. Enjoy the dress and the money while they last. Boys like Junho do not get to keep nice things, and neither do women like you. Liana met his eyes and did not look away, and that, she would learn, was the moment he decided to destroy her. A week later, she walked into Junho's study and found Jae-wook standing over him. He had swept the boys' carefully ordered shelves onto the floor, just to watch him panic. Junho had his hands over his ears and was rocking, counting fast and broken, trying to make the world line up again. Jae-wook was laughing. Look at the air, he said. The great Seo legacy. Something in Liana came loose. She crossed that room faster than she had moved in years and put herself between the two men like a wall. Get out, she said, and her voice was so low and so certain that Jae-wook actually stepped back. You will never touch him or his things again. He laughed, but it was thinner now because he had seen her eyes, and her eyes meant it. When he was gone, Liana knelt and began handing Junho his things one at a time, slowly, letting him place each one himself. She did not fix it for him. She helped him fix it. And right here, watch what she does next, because this is the part most people never see coming. She started to hum, softly, the same tune from the east windows, and his breathing slowed to match it. Quick thing before the story pulls you any deeper. This channel lives for moments exactly like this one, the ones that make you forget you are ever going to scroll away. If a story has ever pulled you in this deep, hitting subscribe is the one signal that tells us it worked, that it reached somebody. That is the whole reason Afro-Korean Love Tales Hub keeps building these. So, if Liana already has you, stay close. It only gets harder to look away from here. From the doorway, Myung-hee watched the cleaning woman she had bought for her son, and something in her stone face cracked. She had hired Liana to protect Junho. She had not dared hope anyone would actually care for him. For the first time in a very long time, The dying woman let herself feel something dangerously close to hope. The wedding came faster than Liana was ready for. They held it in a hall that cost more than she would earn in 10 lifetimes. White and red flowers climbing toward the ceiling, gold chairs in perfect rows. It was supposed to be a performance, a contract dressed up in silk. That was what she told herself as she stood behind the doors, waiting to walk toward a man she had agreed to marry for money. The doors opened, and the strangest thing happened. The moment she saw Junho waiting at the altar, stiff in his suit, counting the flowers to keep himself calm, her heart did something it had no contract to do. It lifted. This was supposed to be fake. Nobody had told her heart. When it was his turn to speak, Junho did not say the words the officiant had given him. He looked straight at her, which he almost never did, and he said, "I memorized your hum. All of it. I will keep it safe." It was not in any vow book. It was the most honest promise Liana had ever been given, and she had to bite down hard to keep from crying in front of everyone. Marriage did not soften the family. The first dinner at the long table felt like a trial. Every relative who depended on Jae-wook's favor sat in careful silence, watching the African woman lift the wrong fork on purpose, just to see who flinched. Liana had decided something on her wedding night. She would not shrink in this house. She would take up every inch of space she was entitled to. When an aunt asked, loud enough for the table, how it felt to marry into money, Liana set down her glass and said she would not know, since she had married a man, not a bank. Junho, beside her, reached over and lined her fork up neatly with her plate, the way he liked things, and the small gesture said more than any speech. The table went quiet. But Jae-wook was not a man who lost quietly. Alone in his office that night, he began to build his case. If he could prove the marriage was a fraud, that the African woman had been paid to fake it, the inheritance clause would collapse and Junho would be ruled unfit. Then everything would slide to him. He started pulling Liana's life apart, thread by thread, looking for the one she was hiding. The marriage was supposed to be a contract, but the evenings became something else. They started meeting on the rooftop at dusk, when the day people went home. He taught her the names of the constellations in the order he liked them. She taught him a song from home, slowly, one line a night, and he learned it perfectly and never once missed her note. One night his hand came to rest beside hers on the cold iron, not touching, just close. He left it there a long time, the way you leave a question in the air. Liana did not move her hand away. For Junho, who flinched at most contact, that single inch of nearness was an ocean he had chosen to cross, and they both knew it. But she had a secret eating at her. Late at night, she would slip away and call the hospital across the ocean, asking if the surgery date could be moved up, promising the money was coming. The first half of the million had already gone straight into Zola's care. She had not told Junho any of it. How do you tell a man who loves the truth that you married him with one hidden in your chest? And nobody in that house knew it yet, but Jae-wook had just found her thread. If you are still here with me, still in it, do something for me real quick. Drop one emoji for whatever you are feeling this exact second, and tell me where in the world you are watching from and what time it is where you are. If you have got this playing on your TV, tap that like, so I know you are in the room. I read these. I want to see exactly who is still standing in this storm with Liana. He cornered her in the entrance hall the next morning, the file in his hand. I know about the sister, he said softly. I know where everyone went. You did not marry my cousin, you bought a cure with him. One word from me and the marriage is fraud. The inheritance is void, and your sister's money dries up overnight. Liana's blood went cold, but she did not let her face move. Tell him, she said. Tell the whole family. Yes, I needed the money. And yes, I would marry the devil himself to save my sister. But you have watched me for months, and you know the rest is real. You are not afraid I lied to Junho. You are afraid I did not. That landed, and for one flash, she saw the fury behind his calm. Before Liana could decide what to do with the threat, the house broke open another way. Myung-hee collapsed in the living room, one hand at her chest, her face the color of ash. The illness she had been hiding behind silk and posture had finally come for her in the open. And the timing could not have been crueler, because the Empire's protection died with her. They took her to a private hospital where the corridors were quiet and the doors stayed closed. The family gathered, all of them performing grief, while measuring the will behind it. Liana sat apart, holding Junho's hand, because he could not bear the lights and the smell and the not knowing, and she was the only one who thought to bring his headphones and sit with him in the storm. She held him through the worst of it, humming under the hum of the machines, and he gripped her hand like it was the one fixed point in a spinning room. Somewhere in that long night, Liana stopped telling herself this was a contract. You do not memorize a frightened man's breathing for money. You do it because somewhere along the way, he became yours to protect. When Myung-hee woke, she asked for Liana alone. The mask was gone for good now. I was wrong about you, she said, her voice paper-thin. I bought you to guard my son, and you went and loved him instead. I have no right to ask, but I am asking. When I am gone, do not let them take him. Promise me. Liana pressed the frail hand to her cheek and promised. Then Myung-hee told her one last thing. Jae-wook will come for everything the moment I close my eyes, she whispered. He is clever and he is patient, and he believes cruelty is the same as strength. Do not try to beat him at being cruel. You will lose. Beat him by being the thing he cannot understand. Liana did not know yet how completely that advice would save her. She passed 3 days later, quietly, in the early morning, with a shawl Liana had brought folded over her shoulders. The Iron Matriarch, who had knelt on a marble floor for her son, left the world having finally believed someone else would catch him. The bed was smoothed flat. The chair beside it was empty, and the protection she had spent her life building was gone with her last breath. The funeral filled the estate with people who had feared Myung-hee and now came to measure her absence. Liana stood at the front in black, holding Junho's hand so he would not have to face the crowd alone. Junho did not cry the way the others expected. He stood very still and counted the white flowers over and over, because the number was the only thing holding him together. Liana did not tell him to stop. She counted with him, under her breath, and let him lean into her shoulder. He did not even wait a week. At the reading of the will, Jae-wook rose with a document of his own and announced he had proof the marriage was a paid arrangement. He had the bank trail. He had the dates. He had, he said, a confession waiting to happen. The room turned to Liana, hungry for her ruin. Liana stood. She did not deny the money. She told them the truth, all of it, her sister, the surgery, the bargain, in a voice that never shook. Then she said the thing none of them expected. Yes, I was bought. And then I chose. Every day since, I have chosen him. Can any of you say the same about anyone? Then Junho did something he had never done in that house. He stood up. He looked at his cousin, met his eyes, and said, "Clearly, she is my wife." I counted. 340 days she has stayed when she did not have to. You have stayed for the money. Get out of my mother's house. The silence afterward was enormous. Jae-wook left, but at the door he turned. This is not over, he said, his voice smooth and cold. You think a speech protects you. I will take the company through the board, and when I have it, I will make sure that boy and his African wife have nothing. He walked out believing he still held every card. But Liana had been a cleaner in that tower for 2 years. She knew which doors locked and which never did, which executives stayed late and which left their screens unguarded. And Junho, it turned out, had been quietly memorizing the company's numbers his whole life. Every transaction, every pattern, because numbers were where he felt safe. Together they began to build something. Here, Junho said, tapping one line among hundreds. It is wrong. It has been wrong for 3 years. Liana looked closer. Jae-wook had been quietly draining company funds into accounts of his own, certain no one would ever audit the man who controlled the audits. No one except the cousin he had spent his life calling stupid. They had enough to bury Jae-wook. One file to the board, one file to the authorities, and the man who had threatened them would lose everything. Liana's hands itched to send it, but Myung-hee's last words sat in her chest. Beat him by being the thing he cannot understand. She looked at Junho and made a choice that surprised even her. Jae-wook found out they had the files. Desperate men do desperate things, and he asked her to meet him alone, in the garage beneath the tower, at night. Liana went because she had stopped being afraid of him somewhere back in that study. She brought the file. She did not bring Junho. Some storms you walk into alone. He was not smooth anymore. He paced between the pillars, telling her she had no idea what she was holding, that she could name her price, that everyone had a price. Liana held up the file, so he could see it. "This ends you," she said quietly. "The board copy, the legal copy, all of it. I could send it tonight, and you would be ruined by morning." And then she lowered the file. "I am not going to send it," she said. "Not because you deserve mercy. Because Junho asked me not to become you. So here is what happens. You resign quietly. You return what you stole, and you walk away with your name. That is more than you would ever have given us." He stared at her like she was speaking a language he could not parse. He laughed. It was the worst thing he could have done. "You are soft," he spat, just like him. "You had me, and you flinched. That was your one shot." He turned and strode for his car, already certain her mercy was the proof that she was weak, and he was untouchable. He had no idea he had just signed his own ending. Believing himself safe, he got greedy. That same night, he called his contact on the board and pushed his takeover early, moving the very funds Liana had a record of, certain no one was watching. He doubled down on the exact crime she had handed him a chance to bury. Mercy had not weakened her. It had given him just enough rope. Liana had given him his chance. He had thrown it away with both hands. So now, with a clear conscience, she did what she had held back from doing. She and Junho sat together at the desk, and she let him press the key, because the numbers had always been his. The file went to the board and the authorities at the same moment, time-stamped, undeniable, his own fresh crime stapled to the old ones. It moved fast after that. The board froze his accounts before dawn. The authorities came before noon. The man who had promised to leave them with nothing stood alone in his glass office and watched his empire vanish from the very screens he had used to steal it. He had not been beaten by cruelty. He had been beaten by the one thing he never respected, mercy he was too small to accept. That night the penthouse was finally quiet, the kind of quiet that does not hold its breath. Liana sat with Junho on the sofa and let herself feel how tired she was, all the way to the bone. "You did not become him," Junho said. "I was worried you would." She turned to him. "So was I," she admitted. "You stopped me." He thought about that, then nodded once, satisfied, and filed it somewhere safe. In the weeks that followed, Junho began to do something nobody had taught him. He started to give. First a small box, held out carefully, inside it a delicate gold pendant shaped like the constellation he had taught her first. "I made the man at the shop draw it the right way," he said. "Your order, not his." She wore it every day after that. He wanted to give her the world, and being Junho, he did it with precision. He arranged a private afternoon at a boutique he had researched for a week, choosing it because their tailoring was, in his words, the most consistent in the city. He did not want her squeezed into someone else's idea of a shape. He wanted everything cut exactly for her. When Liana stepped out in the gold gown, she barely recognized the woman in the mirror. For 2 years she had worn a gray uniform and made herself small. Now the fabric fell over every curve like it had been poured on, elegant and proud, and she stood up straighter than she had in her whole life. Junho looked at her and forgot, for once, to look away. "You are exactly the same," he said, and she felt a flicker of confusion until he finished. "The dress changed. You did not. I always thought you were the most." He could not find the last word, so he just pressed his hand flat over his own chest and that said it better than any word could. He took her traveling, the way the very rich do, except he planned every hour of it around what would not overwhelm him, so that the trip belonged to both of them. A coast first, where the sea was the exact blue he liked, then a city of gardens, then a place where the lights came on slowly at dusk. 3 destinations, each chosen with the same care he gave the floor tiles. On the balcony over the turquoise sea, with the wind in her hair, Liana finally said the thing out loud. "I did not marry you for the money," she told him. "Not really. I came for the money, and I stayed for you." Junho was quiet a long time, watching the waves count themselves in. "I know," he said simply. "You stopped humming the sad way." Then the phone rang, and the joy drained out of the afternoon in a single second. It was the hospital across the ocean. Zola had taken a turn. The surgery that was supposed to be weeks away had to happen now, tonight, or there would be no surgery at all. Liana's legs nearly went out from under her. She did not even have to explain. Junho read it on her face, the way he read everything, completely. "How much?" he asked. She started to say it was already paid, that it was the timing, the travel, the specialists they would have to fly in. He cut through all of it with 4 words. "Then we go now." They flew through the night. Junho, who hated changes to his routine more than almost anything, sat through a red-eye flight and a strange airport and a city he had never seen, gripping Liana's hand and counting his breaths, doing the hardest thing in the world for him because she needed him to. She watched him do it and loved him so much it frightened her. They made it. Barely. Liana sat outside the surgery doors where she had once only dreamed of sitting, close enough to fight for her sister instead of helpless across an ocean. Junho sat beside her and did not say empty comforting things because he did not know how to lie. He just stayed. Hour after hour. He just stayed. When the surgeon finally came out, smiling, and said the words "it went well," "She will live," Liana folded in half and wept like something breaking open after years of being held shut. Every floor she had scrubbed, every lonely night, every one she had sent home, all of it had led to this one sentence. Junho put his arms around her, awkward and careful and complete, and held on. 2 days later, Liana held her sister's hand while Zola sat up for the first time, weak and laughing and alive. Zola looked at the gold pendant at her sister's throat, then at the quiet man standing by the door, and she smiled in a way that asked a question. Liana just nodded, and the 2 sisters cried and laughed at once, the way you do when the worst thing finally stops being true. Junho did not shake Zola's hand, because hands were hard for him. Instead, he gave her a small, careful wave and told her, with total seriousness, that her sister hummed in the key of D and was wrong about it being sad. Zola laughed so hard the nurse came to check on her. From that moment, she adored him. They brought Zola back to Seoul to recover, and the cold museum of a penthouse finally became a home. There was a bright print throw on the dark sofa now, and flowers that nobody arranged at perfect angles, and the sound of 2 sisters talking late into the night. Junho liked the new sounds. He told Liana the apartment had been too quiet before, and he had not known it was a problem until it was solved. On the rooftop one dusk, under the bulb lights he had strung in a pattern that pleased him, Junho took her hands and stood closer than he had ever stood to anyone. "I would like to try," he said carefully, "if you would tell me how, so I do it right." Liana's heart was pounding at a number she did not bother to count. She showed him how. Slowly. The first kiss they ever shared, they built together. A woman who came to a foreign city with nothing but a mop and a secret had found a sister's life saved, a cruel man undone by his own hand, and a love no contract could have predicted. So, before you carry this one with you for the rest of the day, do one thing for me. Comment the single word that is sitting heaviest in your chest right now, just one. Send this to the one person you know needs to feel seen tonight. And subscribe, because the next story we tell might undo you all over again.